Yeah, we're live now. I mean, look, we were 10 seconds late. People started wondering. It's amazing what we were talking about. Like I said, I didn't know I didn't know y'all were coming down here. I knew that you were going to Lake Fork, right? You popped up and we're going to Lake Fork, and I don't know if anyone knows. Like me and you've never spoke. We've never done anything, and I was like, okay, he's at Lake Fork. He wanted to come see Texas. And then I heard you were fishing the Brandon Belt tournament. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I'm like, good for him coming over here from Alabama to fish something really big because, and I'll get into that in a second, but it intrigued me a little bit because I'm like, we got guys from Rayburn that won't go freaking an hour away because they're such big homers. So when I saw that, listen, you might not catch a single fish down here. It didn't matter. Or you might have won it. To me, I was like, all right, man, I'm glad some of these guys don't mind traveling because I'll travel. Like I'm a guy who will travel and I don't care. But I was really, I was really happy you were coming down here and that you were going to try some of this stuff. And so I reached out to you because I was like, man, you were kind of talking pretty good about Texas. So I wanted to, and we had me and a buddy had gotten on about the Alabama Bass Trail, and I didn't know much. I've always heard it, right, but I've never fished it. I heard about it, and they're doing the ABT 100, and I got confused with the 100 and the other stuff, and I was on here trying to get all the information, and I'm sure I got some of it wrong, and I know Luke's heading that thing up, so I mean, I wanted to get your perspective on. I was like, who else to like? There's probably no one else from Alabama that fishes that stuff and fish this, and then to get your perspective on like what it was. That's why I really reached out because I wanted to hear what you thought about it all.
So the first thing, and I don't want to get on this soapbox because I'll talk for an hour about it.
We got time.
Is
Hey, we got nothing but
so
time.
so you said something there about homers that won't even fish. Okay, so they let us trailer in that event, and so
Yep,
we put up at that one of the ramps up by the canyons. I don't know the name of it,
Monterey probably, or
and we
Monterey
put
or
in there
Castle Boykins.
Castle Boykins. We put
Okay,
in there, and when we went to take the boat out, there was over 100 boats in the parking lot, and I'm like, are they checking us in here? And we they were having another tournament,
mm-hmm.
and nothing blows my mind more than for you to have a $50,000 tournament at the other end of the lake, and you want to go fish something else. And for us, look, I've been one of the most complimentary people in the world of the Alabama Bass Trail. Okay, Kay and I, we ain't speaking right now, um, because of some things with the last tournament, but we don't have what y'all have. Okay, we got the ABT 100, but only 100 of us can fish it, and it's $25,000. Okay, so the way this all got started is I'm sponsored by Fishing Chaos. Fishing Chaos does all the registration and the leaderboards and stuff for Brandon Bell. And he, John had called me and told me he was going out there, and then he tells me about the tournament. And we've been talking about it a while because I really can't say yet, but I can say this: I'm bringing Brandon Belt to Alabama. Okay, it's coming. But anyway, I said, man, I want to go out there and fish for $50,000, and so he told me when the tournament was. Well, I called a bunch of the pros that I know and said, hey, why don't y'all come fish? And some of the schedules didn't line up, and some of them are coming to fish other tournaments. But I was like, hey, why would y'all not pay $1,000 to go fish for 50, but you'll pay 5,800 to fish for 100? That doesn't make sense to me. And so I said, yeah, I'm coming. Well, all the rookies were out there, and other elite series langers were out there at Lake Fork, and so I didn't want to just carry my boat. My son was fishing here, so I called JT Tompkins, and he didn't want to miss a practice day, and Logan's sponsored by Fishing Chaos, so I said, well, that'd be great. I'll just go with you to Fork, and then we'll go to Brandon Bell. And then I got there and I started realizing all the things that was in that trail. Like, I'm not a Bass Cat guy, but if you are a Bass Cat guy, oh my gosh. Bass Cat gave him 3 boats last year, and he's giving one away this year in the virtual tournament that he's doing. One goes to, and you correct me if I'm wrong on any of this.
No, you got it. I think you're going to get it right.
And the top finishing Bass Cat guy in the Angler of the Year.
Say that slower for everyone so everyone hears this.
Okay, there were 50 guys in that tournament that had a Bass Cat. Okay, if you didn't fish that tournament, you are not going to be in the Angler of the Year points. So you're fishing against 50 guys. The top finishing Bass Cat guy in the Angler of the Year points. You ain't got to win it.
20th place. 20th might be 20th place at the overall standing.
22nd place this week got $2,500 for being in a Bass Cat. And so the top finishing guy gets a Bass Cat. And not only that, if you make the championship, they give a Bass Cat to somebody in the championship. And I'm just sitting there going, are you kidding me? And, not down in the Alabama Bass Trail at all, but we pay $1,000 in the ABT 100 and we're fishing for 25,000. Y'all are paying 1,000 and fishing for 50, and some of them can win a boat on top of that.
Yeah.
And so I'm just like, why are more people not doing it? Well, then I went out to eat with Brandon every night that we were there, and he explained more to me about what he was wanting to do and why he wanted to do it. And I just thought it was awesome. And, we've sort of, and I don't mean to sound elitist in any way about this, but you get to a certain point where you've outgrown the $1,000 tournaments. And you also see with the way the economy is, you're not making any money at $1,000 tournament. And so you want to fish something bigger. But like for me, when my kids were born, I quit fishing for 4 years. I finished second in a Toyota series, got a 4-minute late penalty, told my wife, if I don't win, I'm done. And I finished second. So I quit while my kids were growing up. And I didn't have anything. I couldn't go fish the elites. I couldn't go try to qualify for something. I had kids playing ball and all that stuff. So it's to be able to have something like that, to be able to fish is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And, yeah, it was 9-hour trip for us. But the great thing is, I mean, you only get 2 days of practice anyway. Everybody does.
So listen, I don't know if you've watched any of my videos. There's probably people on here going, please, Todd, don't talk about this again. Because I've spent 4 years talking about tournaments and trying to get people to understand everything that, I mean, I have made a living fishing tournaments and not fishing at the pro. I fished the pro level a couple times, but like mainly, I mean, I didn't have this luxury of like having a bunch of money when I was younger. I don't have a bunch of money now, but like I had to fish local stuff, and that's how I made it. There was no like just going and fishing the elites or like doing any of that stuff. Like I had to like figure out that was my job. So I looked into tournaments at a young age. And so even when, like, people probably don't know this, when we started, I can honestly say I started this tournament trail called the Platinum Trail like 7 years ago, or I don't even remember what it was, because I went around asking some tournament directors, how come how come there's not a big team tournament? And that's what was going, that's how it all started. I asked a couple tournament directors, like went up to them face to face. Why don't we have a team trail for like $1,000 or $1,500, whatever? And they said, well, there's no interest in it. And I said, but yet there's 200 guys or 150, 175 guys fishing the Toyotas by themselves for $1,700, $1,500, $1,700 at the time. I said, that's not true. So what I did is I still have it, man. I still have my pad, and I went around and I called all my buddies. I called over 100 people from Texas, and people, I was like, if you had this, would you do it? Yep. Every one of them. Yes. And I wrote down every single name, and I presented it to some people. And I realized that there's two reasons why a lot of guys didn't want to do it. One, it's called work, and they didn't want to do it. And they had, and we'll get into this, and you'll probably agree. They had their little way of doing things, and they were going to make a whole bunch of money as a tournament organization, and they just had it set up a certain little way, and they were making a whole bunch of money, and they didn't have to give out a bunch of money, and it was all this. And I was like, man, but there's a group of us that, like you said, it's not, and by no means, like, am I an elitist? No one will ever say, like, at the time, I didn't have a nice boat, but I'm like, hey, I still want to make money when I fish tournaments. Like, this is, I want to, why wouldn't anyone want to? I don't understand the reason of, we've got 5,000 small tournaments that we can go fish to not make money. You can go pick and choose those all over the country.
Yep.
We're just asking for one circuit, maybe even two, where you can actually make money if you go fish. So I devised up this whole thing about it. I was like, hey, it has to be there's a reason why it has to be 100 teams. There's a reason in there. We made this whole deal about side pot money, because side pot money, every tournament in the country should have side pot money. The reason that they don't is because it's actually extra work for the tournament director to actually have to add some numbers together at the end of the day. But really, and they don't make any money off it because it's 100% payback. So there's some things to think about why people don't do that, but we did it. It wasn't run exactly the right way. Okay. We tried to explain it to them how to do it, but sometimes they didn't do what we told them to do, and it got messed up. And then we tried it again, and it semi-worked again. We always said while we were doing this, me and my buddies were like, hey, even if it doesn't work, we're showing someone the blueprint, and someone will take this blueprint and run with it. Someone that will and I even talked to Brandon and them when this was all going on, I had dinner and said, hey man, these are just things to look out for, things to keep in mind when doing this. And it's been great. I don't see him slowing down, and I hope it goes to Alabama. But I was shocked when I started seeing the Alabama Bass Trail stuff, because and not theirs particularly, but I see on social media all these, someone wins a tournament and they're holding fish up and all this different stuff. And I rarely ever see them talk about the money they won. And so I've heard a little bit too of going, guys, like, how many guys in Texas fish for a living, or how many guys in Alabama can just stay at home and fish? And I'm like, I don't really think hardly anyone. I think you can. I did it in Texas, but I would have to really dive into how I did it. And it wasn't in Texas. Like, it was in Texas, but I traveled and fished other stuff. You can't just stay in Texas and not make money, make a living. Making money, yes, tons of people do that. But actually make a living to where you're not like living in a I don't want to say anything bad, but I wouldn't say making $25,000 or $30,000 at the end of the day. I mean, that is you scraping by to where if you don't have a good year, the next year you're done. So that it would be a little bit more than that to actually make it. I mean, because when you're buying $80,000 boats and everything else like that, you've got to have some cash flow coming in, and 30 grand fishing tournaments can go in 6 months quick.
So JT Tompkins, I did a video, said that the Bassmaster Opens are not a good financial decision. And I fished 3 last year.
Same with me.
I finished the top 10, 30th, I think, and didn't get a check in the other one. So I made $11,000, but I promise you I spent more than that. Now, I had sponsors pay the entry fees and that sort of thing, but let's say we don't have sponsors, okay?
Yeah.
And JT Tompkins, he won the points, so he was obviously the most dominant person in Opens. He made $92,000. By the time with the practice that he did, he broke even.
Mm-hmm.
And your name comes up more than anybody's. So I deal with a lot of the brands on different stuff with Fishing Chaos and whatnot. And when this MLF thing came into effect of, hey, we're going to cut to 50 or whatever, your name came up more than anybody's from the brands in saying, we don't care what you fish. We just want you to fish. We just need to be able to see you. And social media has changed that. And one of my buddies, who is an investor with Fishing Chaos, he offered to pay for me to go fish the opens this year. He said, I'll pay for all 9. And I said, well, okay, you're talking about giving me $60,000. Why, you're going to give me that money and I'm not going to be able to make it back unless I win an event. And so the way social media is now, I can go fish wherever I want to. And I make more money off of social media than I'm going to make off of fishing tournaments. And I make a lot of money, to me, fishing tournaments in Alabama, especially on Wheeler and Gunnersville and Pickwick. I can stay right at home. And, you know, I go win a BFL. Well, by the time I get all the contingency stuff, I got $12,000 or $14,000. But I still make more money from social media, and not just specifically from TikTok or from Instagram or whatever, but because of what it gets me from other people doing videos for companies and things like that. So you're right. These other people, though, that don't have social media, that are just trying to fish and make money, you can't do it. You just can't. I mean, you know, Jordan and I had this conversation, and I said, take the classics away. Take your 2 classics away and your sponsors. Can't do it. Couldn't do it. You know, if you take those 2 classics away and you take what Jordan's won, well, he couldn't pay his entry fees and his light bill every year. You know, and he's considered one of the best in the world.
I know. And so, like, I was like you. I made a top 10 in open last year. I ended up, I think, 18th at another one and missed a check. But I'm so calculated on how I do everything, in the fact of the opens were on Toledo, for me, Eufaula, Oklahoma, which was pretty close. So Toledo, I stayed up my buddy. I have a place to stay, so that didn't cost me really much of anything. I don't take. They give you 5 days of practice. Not my wildest dreams would I ever practice for 5 days. So 4 is a lot, but I did those 2, and then the third one was at Lake of the Ozarks. Now that's a drive, not a bad drive for me. But then they had the Toyota the next week, and so I was like, "This is perfect." So I went there and did the Bassmaster Opens, and then I hope he leaves it. I did the Bassmaster Opens and then did the Toyotas back to back. And I stayed at a buddy's house because I've been fishing the Toyotas at Lake of the Ozarks forever. So I was kind of getting a 2-for-1 in the sense of I got to drive there and stay there. And then I made the cut in the Toyota. So even though I didn't make a check at one, I made a check at the other. So even those things are planned out, that I try to do everything in a way to where I cut costs. Like my expenses for the year are so much less than everyone else's. And then all my tournaments I fish are for big money. And so I'm just always shocked. And I bring this up because you said your guys, they want to be seen. Gosh dang it. Guys, he's just gonna have to. I know what it is. I think it's my Sunline. I think it's the Sunline order, and he probably hears me in here talking and wonder why I won't answer the door. I hope he leaves it at the doorstep. He's not going to, because I had to sign for it yesterday. But you know, they say that you want to be seen, but yet MLF isn't on live this year on the first 2 days, and so and I'm not saying that about, but.
Well, you said that about practice about 5 days. And Swindle called me yesterday on the way home from Texas, and he was asking me about everything. And we were talking about all the guys that were over there pre-practicing. He said, Slick, I'm pissed off that they voted to go to an extra day of practice for 3. You know, he said, that just cost us more money.
Watson said the same thing.
And they vote for off day. That's what it was. He said they voted for off day. He said, guess what? That off day, I ain't getting to practice, and I'm having to stay for another day to pay for another day to stay there. That's just costing more money.
I agree. And so I saw I saw Brent Ayler at Rayburn Friday. Was I guess because they're on Toledo, so I guess he was over there messing around on Rayburn. But I'm with you. Like that's when you said it. There's so many things that people just don't take into factors. But like even the Brandon Belt. When we started all this, I tried to put like a 10-day off limits when we did all this, and I was trying to make it what I wanted. I wanted two things from tournaments. It's all I ever really want, or a couple. But here's one. I want it to be fishing is not fair. Okay, fishing is one of the most unfair sports there is. Golly, give me just a second. Hold on.
Yeah, somebody asked why is MLF not on live today. So their first 2 days, there will be no coverage at the events. They cut their production people last year, and so they don't have enough people to cover it. I think they have 7 camera boats now is what they've cut to, but they cut all their production people. So I was answering that question. Somebody asking about MLF not being live.
I'm glad you did. It was a FedEx. FedEx stayed there this whole time. It was because I had to sign for a Sunline order. But anyways, thank you. No, so I wanted tournaments to be fair, okay, as fair as possible, because they're not fair. They're not fair on electronics, boats. People have to work. Some people don't. All these things. So some people live at lakes. Some people don't. You can get information. Sometimes you can't. Whatever. So they're the most unfair thing in the world. But we all agree that if we can try to make them as fair as possible, that's what we want. And then second is like, okay, how do we make this cost efficient, but yet we make money? And I'm for the tournament organizations making money too. So I want us all to make money, right? And there's ways to do it. And so I was like, hey, if we have an off limits, guys aren't going to complain about some guy spending every single day for 7 days that has the money to stay out on the lake. You have a 10-day off limits, a 2-day practice. That way you're forced to you don't have to be there, because a lot of times if you get 5 days of practice, you almost feel like you're not working as hard as someone else. Because I'm a guy who, like, you're not going to outwork me. Like, I'm going to put more time in than you. I took a back seat to that now, because I realized the more I practiced, actually sometimes the worse I got. So I found a happy medium that I can live with myself going, I'm going to practice as hard as I can for 3 days. But if I practice more, it changes. And I want to be able to change when it changes. So, but like you said, 2-day practice, 2-day event, you're gone for a very short amount of time, as opposed to the opens or any of these things. I mean, the opens at Okeechobee, if I had to drive to Okeechobee, it's a 2-day drive, 5-day practice, possibly a 3-day event, and a 2-day drive back. I don't know if I can do math on that. 5, 8, 9, 10. That's 12 days. 12 days to lose money.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Here's the other thing for this year. John at Fishing Chaos, and I'll talk to you after this and explain some things about what they're doing that's helping the tournaments and the anglers make money. But he asked me, what are you fishing this year? And I told him, he said, you don't need to fish any tournaments. And I said, what? Of course, he's got some stuff going where I can do live stuff and get paid. And I said, John, the Toyota Championship is on my home lake. Their schedule is Gunnersville, Smith Lake, and Chickamauga. I never drive over an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm going to get to fish for $245,000. I think I'm going to fish it. He said, let me ask you a question. He said, why do you fish the opens and stuff? I said, I fish for one reason. I want to go fish the Bassmaster Classic one time. He said, so you don't want to be a pro? I said, well, a pro, there's a different definitions for pros. And I've always said the pros were the elite guys and the Bass Pro Tour guys. Okay. Those are the elite pros, I would say. There's a lot of pros. Okay. There's one that y'all have in Texas. Clark Ream has made a living fishing. Okay. Not winning, fishing. And Clark could tell you, hey, I'm not a winner. I'm gonna go try to cash a check guy, get paid by the sponsors, that sort of thing. He works at it. So people like that, and even guides, they get paid to fish, so you got to consider them professionals, you know. But he asked me, he said, "Why do people want to be a professional fisherman?" And I sat there and I thought about it. I said, I guess maybe it's for the recognition, somewhat. I said, but it's also to be able to fish every day, to fish for a living. And he looked at me and he goes, "Then you're a professional fisherman."
Well, and let me tell
And
you, stop you right there, because I don't know any. I'll put it to you this way: of all my buddies that fished the tour and the elites, it's not even close to who fishes more.
yeah,
I fish way more than those guys.
absolutely.
It's not even close. And I don't even fish. It's not like I mean, people I think used to think I fish 5 days a week. I guess now that I do lives and stuff, they're like, man, Todd's not on the water all the time. No, it costs a lot of money to go fishing every day. And
Yeah.
I don't have money to just blow to just go fishing for fun every day. But I also fish November, December, January. Like I don't take those months off to hunt and do, like, I fish a lot. And I know a lot of guys are like, man, yeah, I put my boat up and haven't been in it in 4 months. And I'm like, that's crazy to me. But the pro thing is, I think, I've always said this. I've never considered myself a pro. I think I don't even know what that means. And there's a lot of people in a lot of companies that have said, man, and I think this is their way of, to be honest with you, of trying to knock certain people down. I think they're very misconstrued on what actually is good for a company and what's bad, like what actually helps companies out. I'm going to say that.
I definitely want to talk about that one.
What I'll say is that, like, just because you're on the BPT or the elites or NPFL, I mean, it's so hard now to keep track of there's so many different things that the opens are now a bigger step, right? But before, like you said, BPT or the elites, it was the tour. Well, so what's Dakota Ebert? Is he now? He was a pro. He was a pro last year, but now he's not one, right? And guys, when he blacks out like that, he said if he gets a phone call, it knocks him out, and he can't find the do not disturb, or he's trying to, but every time someone calls him, it knocks him out of the deal. So, but anyways, yeah, he'll come right back. What I've always said is that, like, is Dakota Ebert not a pro because he's not fishing the BPTs or the elites? It's just weird. It's just weird how that was the case. And I always made the case too, back in the touring days, that half those guys, like I said, Dakota not a pro, but when they made that argument, I'm like, hey man, I can show you 50 guys on an FLW tour at the time that if you go, this is what's great. I love MLF. I love MLF for this one reason and one reason only. You can get on MLF, and then that little search button, you can go click someone's name. And when you go click their name, it'll bring up all their stats. And I'm like, This guy's fishing the tour. Absolutely. And he's never fished a Toyota or a BFL. 100%. And that's how you're supposed to qualify, apparently, to get in those things. But I guarantee you, if you went on Ranger's website, he went and bought him a Ranger and paid his entry for the tour. That makes him a pro. I don't consider you a pro because you pay a higher entry fee.
No. Todd, you're going to get me on a big time soap.
No, this is what I'll talk about. So, I'm sure people get mad about it.
I've done a lot of videos. This is the one thing that I try to teach my high school kids. Okay. One day this happened to my high school team. I've got Alabama Bass Academy. I've got 12 kids. So one day one of my kids comes in with a Woo Tungsten Pro Staff shirt. Okay. Hey, shout out to Woo Tungsten. Your marketing's great. Unbelievable. Great idea. Take advantage, kids. So what they did was they said, hey, these high school kids can sign up to be on the Woo Tungsten Pro Staff, right? You can get a sweatshirt for $59 that says Pro Staff on the back. Well, these kids went and got it. Now we're going to give you a 15% discount. And if you get a buddy to buy $100 worth, we'll give you another 10%. Okay. So all my kids go and spend $300 or $400 on tungsten and get their Woo Tungsten Pro Staff jerseys. And so my son comes in, he goes, Daddy, please don't say nothing to him. I know you're going to get mad at him. Please don't say nothing. I said, no. We ain't doing that. So I had a talk with him and I said, listen, let me tell you what hurts the industry. What hurts the guys that really need to be getting paid is when that guy goes and puts that Mercury sticker on his truck, hummingbird stickers all over his truck. I've got guys here that wrap their boats because they got a discount from somebody. Drives me nuts. I can't stand it because I'm sitting there going, guys, you're hurting the people that are actually should be getting deals. And you know, these companies have it made because they get free marketing. They get free marketing because we'll go out and wear a Mercury shirt or a Ranger shirt or whatever it may be. And it just drives me nuts. And we've got one high school kid and he wrapped his boat for a battery company. And I was like, dang, dude, that you got, they give you batteries or something? He's like, no, man, they gave me a 10% discount. Okay, you got to start somewhere. Everybody's got to start somewhere. So I'm not banging on people for starting and saying they're on a pro staff. I'm not saying that. But we go to extremes to say we're professionals, to look the part. Okay. And it drives me nuts sometimes to see that in the industry, and these brands have it made because, I mean, people will go out and do free marketing for them.
Well, this is how I've talked to a lot of people. Now, mind you, I guess I am from Texas, so we gotta. But this is the way I looked at it, and this because I can only look at it one way, right? How I saw it when I was there. When I was younger, I would have bake. I almost have not like I don't have my boat wrapped. I don't have any of that stuff, right? I always looked at it, and I had my boat wrapped when I was on tour for Costa, but it was a phenomenal deal, right? It was a phenomenal, like they were partnered with FLW at the time. Costa was like in part everything. It was great. But when I would look at companies, and especially bait companies, and I was harder on bait companies than anything else because I was making money fishing. And I was making a lot of money fishing. And my outlook at it was this. Say I made 50 grand a year. And I would say that would be on the light side of things. When I was in my 20s, if I made over 50 grand a year and I could just wear a white shirt up there, right? Nothing on it. And someone goes, hey man, if they had me on a podcast or any of these things, they would say, hey, I wouldn't do them for one, but for a reason. And two, I was like, I'm not going to tell you what I caught them on. I'm not going to tell you what I was doing. Why? I'm good. I'm making money on fishing, just straight up fishing. And they're like, well, you know, we can give you free bait, you know? And I was like, yeah, I'll get free baits. I'll talk about it. I'm not going to lie because I don't want to lie about stuff. And I think anyone that's watched my YouTube sees that what I do in tournaments is what I talk about on YouTube. It's why I'm so transparent, because I try to be the most transparent guy on YouTube, if at all possible, because I think that's how you show legitimacy. But I would be like, I'm not going to sit there and lie and tell people the wrong thing. I'd just rather not tell you. Like, hey, how'd you catch them? I'm like, I don't really go up to people and ask them what you caught them on, so hopefully you don't go up and ask me type thing. But I don't want free baits because I'd rather go spend $1,000 on baits and win $5,000 that weekend rather than go get, you know, hey, we're going to give you, you know, $3,000 worth of baits a year, and you got to go tell everyone what you're catching them on, doing all that. And I'm like, well, great. Now I'm going to lose 20 grand a year because I'm going to let my secrets out. And it wasn't a good enough for me personally. That's how I wasn't going to balance it out. And I'm like, yeah, you can keep your $3,000. I'll make that on a weekend fishing. I'm good. And so I always looked at it that way, that like, you can't give me, and I tell people that, I'm like, look, stop worrying about discounts or any of that stuff, man. Just go try to do really well. I tell every young kid, just try to do really good in tournaments. Yeah. The other stuff, if you catch them good enough, everyone's like, how do you make it out? I'm like, and I try to go beat around the book. Like, I try not to give a direct answer, but my direct answer is this. I'll give you all of it. Just do really well. If you don't have enough money at the end of the year, maybe fishing's not for you. Yep. But if you do, then you've done something good enough in fishing to keep you around to fish the next year. And that's what I've always done. And I'm like, man, fishing will gobble you up and spit you out if you're not good enough. Now, there are some guys that are good enough that have gotten spit out. I think that's just the nature of this beast that they don't want to tell you about. That, I mean, some things kind of have to go your way, not in the fishing side of things, but like meeting some, connecting with certain people or having someone kind of connect with you something. But, that's the way I look at it.
But I wonder now where it's going. And I don't want to forget to talk about what you said about guys that's never fished anything. Because I had a kid, one of my buddies, the night before the Toyota Series on Smith, he had to go in the hospital. So they're calling anybody that's fished a BFL, whatever. One of my kids from my high school team gets in the Toyota Series. He finishes like 106th, whatever it is. And 3 months later, he gets an invitation to the MLF Invitationals for fishing because he fished the Toyota Series. And then, I got buddies that fish MLF Invitationals, and I consider them legit fishermen. They're really good. But then you're going to let people in just because they fished a tournament? And so it kind of, to me, it demeaned the guys at the top with them doing that. But I got a buddy that he doesn't have a lot of money. He grew up with not a lot of money, and he fusses about these high school kids because I do videos about some of these kids that I think are really good, and some of these college guys that have been really good. And he dogs me out every time. He goes, you can't say they're good. You can't sit here and tell me your kid's good when he's going and got all your waypoints. You're taking him and boat capping him and all that stuff. And he's got these advantages. And I'm like, well, what advantages are you talking about? And he said, well, the boat for one. He said, but then you got live scope, and now you got 5 or 6 units on these boats, and they're $80,000 boats. And so I do think our sport has gotten to a point to where it's become a money thing in a lot of ways. I do think that people can still make it. Look, Jesse Wiggins, 5 years before he made the Elite Series, okay, dude didn't have a graph on his boat. Okay, I can remember many tournaments at Smith Lake. I remember one specifically. It was $1,500 tournament, and they had this old 2-stroke Evinrude. And I'm telling you right now, if it don't fire on that first lick, she ain't starting that day. And so, boat wouldn't crank. They're stuck with troll motor all day. They end up winning, And now him and his brother Jordy have won so much money fishing. And it goes back to what you said: be good. Do well, and things are going to come. And Jesse's caught him, and he's slowly made his way up, and now he's good. But my buddy argues with me and says a kid that doesn't have money can't make it anymore. And I do agree that they have disadvantages, but they can still make it.
So I grew up. So I've been fishing I've made a video about this, but I've been fishing since I can remember. I caught my first bass in the 7th grade. It was raining outside. We were crappie fishing underneath the marina stall, and the guy told me how to rig up a Texas rig worm. And I was like, so, like, what do you mean? He's like, go, I've been killing them. Just go right over there. And it's pouring down rain. So I walk over there in the rain, pouring down, little kid, and I catch 2 bass. That's it. It's over. Like my life turned from that single day. But all because all I used to do is catfish, white bass, all this stuff. So I'm traveling back and forth from Houston to Lake Livingston. My dad lived on the lake every weekend. It was sports. And then if it wasn't sports, he'd come pick me up. I'd go to the lake and I'd walk the bank. And I walked the bank from 7th grade, basically all the way through high school. That's how I learned to bass fish, walking the bank. And luckily we lived in a big marina. So it was like the best place on the entire lake to fish. So I got, once again, got a little luck on my side, right? That I just happened to live in that marina.
Yeah.
So I learned all these different things. And I finally, eventually, a buddy, like a guy that I still know this day, he said, hey, you want to fish a tournament? Because I was catching them off the bank. We came in second, right? And so it all went a certain way. I eventually, the first boat I had was a 76 Washita with a 40 Evinrude stick steering. And I helped Ron Speed and Rod Speed Jr. They fished a championship. I talked to him a little bit about Livingston. They won the championship. They won this big event, brought me up on stage. I'm this little 16-year-old kid, look goofy as can be. They gave me a free trolling motor after the event for that boat. So I had a new trolling motor and a 1976 six steer, and that's how I learned to fish Livingston. And then we eventually, like somewhere in college, we ended up getting like a stealth boat. Like my dad probably put it on a 50-year plan. I mean, I started, but on Livingston, all I had to do to win tournaments was beat everyone with a rod and reel. Yes. There was no GPS at the time. All I had to do was outfish people with the same thing everyone else did. And I was able to do that. And then I eventually started fishing Conroe and Rayburn and all these other places, but I still only had to compete and beat people with the rod and reel. As I got older and things started happening, and I've said this before too, because I wanted everyone to look at it. There's a lot of things that people say that I don't agree with. And one is, hey, that it doesn't take a boat to catch fish. You know, the boat's never caught a fish. And I'm like, well, okay, that's from people that have never had an old boat and dealt with all the problems that come along with an old boat and old everything. Yeah. You want to go through, we don't have a long enough day to talk about my breakdowns in tournaments. It's amazing. And if you look at my stats on FLW or on the MLF, that thing, it'll show this Angler of the Year stat up until 2011. And then from 2011, it's first, top 10, first. I got five top or Angler of the Years, a second, bunch of top 10s, and all these nothing above like 40. Well, the difference between those two, that 1 year from 2009 to 2010, was in 2010, we won a brand new boat. And it was a boat I kept. And once I had a brand new boat, didn't have all the electronics, but a boat that would get me there and get me back on big lakes like Rayburn or Texoma or Toledo or any of these big lakes where we had to drive through rough water and I didn't have to work on my boat every single day or break down. I can't tell you how many times I broke down tournaments. That was the difference. So I don't ever want to hear people say that stuff doesn't make a difference. I have it now. Like I have live scope now and power poles and all that stuff. I got it for a reason. It helps. Like
that's right.
All that stuff helps. You can make it without it. I'm just saying, I don't know if I would have. If I grew up the way I did now, I don't know if I could make it in the industry. I don't know. I think it would be so hard because I had every tournament I fished, all I had to do was beat you on fishing ability. Now with live, there's going to be tournaments that I have no chance because of live scope. Like say I didn't have there's times when you have no chance. There's times if you didn't have side imaging or like through the years, there's things that if you don't have a big boat and can't go in 6 footers across a lake, which has happened to me, I'm like, I can't tear my boat up. So I think it has gotten to it is a very money driven sport now. And I do think you can make it, but I think it's extremely difficult now. Or I always say it's harder now.
It is. And my argument to him was, we were talking about high school fishing and how the disadvantages. And I said, well, answer me this. Let's say you got a guy that doesn't have live scope, doesn't have a great boat, but his dad takes him fishing every day. He's on the water every day, time on the water. Then you got this other guy that he's got all the electronics, he's got everything, but his dad knows nothing about fishing. Who's got the advantage? You know, I've got two friends that are similar situations. Logan Parks and Tucker Smith, both of them when they fished in high school, their dads didn't fish. Their dads didn't know anything about fishing. They had to learn from other people. Now they were able to get the resources, the boat and stuff like that. And Jordan was another one. When Jordan was 14 or 15 years old, he lived right there by Lake Katoma. He would come in from school and drag the flat bottom a mile through the woods to get to Lake Katoma, and then walk back and get all his stuff, and then go back and go fishing, then drag the boat home, and then go back and get his stuff and bring it back too. He wanted to go fishing. He didn't have a boat, a big boat, and all that stuff. So, the advantages part of it with high school, I do see it. I there's big discrepancies, and I've even, to what you're saying about rough water, I've pitched the idea to high school organizations of, hey, let's trailer at every event, because you got a lot of kids that's got these flat bottoms with 25s. They can't run 20 miles to the dam, so let's let them trailer. And not only that, we don't want them on the big lake in the rough water. Let them trailer.
Not with those boat captains.
Yeah, I know.
And when I say all this, look, and you'll agree with me, we're not saying so like if there's some boat captain out there that just got his panties in a wad and got all mad, look, man, I'm probably not talking about you.
That's right.
But there are boat captains that are it's just like, listen, it's just like there's coaches and sports kit, like they're doing coaching little kids. And I have zero like they probably never done the sport. And I thank a lot of them, because they got no one's willing to coach, and they're stepping up as a parent. I like no problem. I got no problem with that. And they probably don't even know the sport, but they're trying to, right? They're trying to do good by the kids. I'm not even talking bad about those boat captains. The difference is you're probably not going to get my kid in a situation on a basketball court or a soccer field that's going to get him really hurt. But you take a guy who's like trying to step up for some kids and has a boat, but doesn't really know that, and gets out there. I mean, you got a kid out there in some bad water. I mean, you saw there's some video floating around Rayburn the other day after the Brandon Belt deal. Those storms pop up. This wasn't a storm, but things happen on the water, and it's a little bit different being out on the water on a giant lake like Rayburn or Gunnersville or something, as opposed to being on a basketball court.
Absolutely.
There's a big difference. And some of those guys, I know they're trying to help, but man, it's not exactly. It could be a bad situation, and it has been.
I've seen a lot. I had a boat captain. I didn't know, and I should have known. Very first high school tournament we had, guy, his boat tears up, and they had just bought the boat, and so I had another boat, and I said, "Hey man, you want to borrow my boat?" He's like, "Yeah, that'd be great." So he borrows my boat. And so 15 minutes after takeoff, I get a call from one of my buddies. He said, "What's wrong with your boat?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about." I said, "Which boat?" He said, "Your white one." And I said, "Oh, somebody's borrowing it." He was running. He didn't know to trim the motor down.
Right.
I never, that's something we would never think about.
I know.
Like, so he's running my boat with the motor trimmed up, and it's running like this. He hits a barge wake, and my lower unit goes out. And he had been running like that all morning, and had the kids laying on the front deck trying to get it to break over. He just didn't know. He didn't know. And, we take those things for granted, but man, I see it in the high school. I see people running across places, and it scares me to death. And it's not, like you said, it's not everybody. I mean,
No.
I did a video this morning about the wreck on Murray. People were dogging the kids out. That's why kids shouldn't be driving. These kids don't know what they're doing. Look here, I got a whole bunch of kids that I'd rather be driving than a lot of adults that I know. There's a lot of adults that I don't want on the water when I'm out there.
I tell everyone, and I'm sure no one likes. There's tournament organizations that don't like me saying this, but I could tell you one thing. If I was a parent, I am a parent, so I'm not. I say that because this is never going to happen with my kids. But there is no way I would ever let someone under the age of 18, a kid of mine, get in a BFL or a Toyota Series. No way. I would never let them be a co-angler. A boater, yes, but not a co-angler. Yes. There's no
absolutely.
There's no way I would let my kid in someone else's boat.
My kid asked me a year ago. He just turned 17, and when he turned 16, he said, "Daddy, can I go fish as a co-angler?" I said, "Absolutely not." I said, "You can go as a boater."
Yeah.
And he said, "Why would you let me go as a boater?" I said, "Because I trust you more than somebody that I don't know."
100%.
And I said, "Your mother's going to say the same thing." And I let him fish a BFL last year. And I was still nervous, you know, because you don't know how the adult's going to act and that sort of thing. And, you know, and the guy come up to me, you know, and he was like, "Man," he goes, I would go with that kid anytime." And I said, "Well, I appreciate it." And, you know, he was more careful because he was afraid that adult would say something to him.
And you should be.
And I watched the 360 on takeoff, and I thought, well, I'm just going to see how fast he goes. He never got over 55 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I knew why, because he was nervous. And he told me, he said, "Daddy, you know, I'm going to have somebody else's life in my hands." He said, "I promise you I'm not going to drive fast." And I said, "Well, that's, you know, that's up to you, you know." So
But like I said, I mean, I'm gonna trust my kid because I'm gonna teach my kid. I'm gonna teach, you know, that. And listen, man, kids. We all as kids did stuff like don't let my parents see what I did on my bike. I've told my mom lately, and she laughs at all of them because like she let me do things. But I did a bunch of things like that, and it was by myself. But man, my dad let me take out the boat sometime. We had a pontoon boat, and of course, but I spent every day driving it with him for like years. Like I knew how to drive a boat when I was a little kid. I've made my kid sit in my lap, and every single time he goes with me, and I don't even both my kids, they're not going to fish. I don't even care if they get in the fishing deal. Like I want them to do whatever they want to do. But when I take them though, they have to load the boat.
Yeah,
they have to, I make them drive and they have to load the boat. Now they're sitting in my lap and I help them. And my dad always did it because my dad was always nervous. He was like, "Todd, something might happen to us out here to me one day, and you're going to have to drive this boat back in." That's right. So I knew he made it real serious for me. So I was going, yeah, I'm teaching my kids how to, if I just fall over if I have a heart attack, whatever it might be, my kid's going to at least know how to get to shoreline or something. And they're pretty young, but I want them to learn how to load a boat, do all that stuff just for you know, for those reasons.
So not to change the subject, but you had, when you messaged me about us going to Texas, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that with us being at that tournament and those other boats there that didn't go fish the Brandon Belt tournament. I met some people that didn't fish that came to the weigh-in. Mm-hmm. And they made the comment to me, "Yeah, I didn't fish this. I saved my money on this one. Glad I did." Do you think that's because of the competition that's in it, that a lot of people won't pay that? Or what do you think that is?
Okay. All right. And I laugh at this because I have said this. And so on social media, people try to be cute sometimes. And every once in a while, I know it's something I've said, and I'll see it on somebody else's post. Someone will try to say something, and it's kind of like under the radar, kind of like, and I'm like, yeah, that's about me. So when I say guys from Rayburn don't want to travel, I don't say nothing to people because like I don't care. I don't mind calling you out, and I'm not calling them out because they're scared. I'm just saying tournaments like Brandon Belt can't exist if there's not a following for it. And that's my only thing. So I get mad at the Rayburn guys because Rayburn guys sometimes want all the things that come with Rayburn, like these big tournaments, and then they wonder why these tournaments don't succeed is because they're trying to go to the other lakes and the Rayburn guys won't leave. And not all Rayburn guys. So if you're a Rayburn guy that leaves, this isn't you. Don't take offense to this. But the tournament doesn't exist anymore and they're stuck fishing for $5,000 again on a weekend. And I'm like, guys, let's try to – we're not having it – I'm not telling y'all to drive to Okeechobee. Drive to Toledo. Drive to Cedar Creek. Like, they're not that far
30 minutes. Drive 30 minutes to Toledo.
So I'm like, that's my point. Is just that's what I'm trying to get at. So the guys from Rayburn, I'm getting mad about that. Okay, so I've heard them make comments that I'm like calling them out. It's just like I used to get mad about the guys that would fish Bassmaster Opens and not fish the Toyota events. There was a time when Toyotas weren't getting enough entries. And Bassmaster Opens, this was like 8-9 years ago, were like filling up. And I'm like, why is this guy from Texas? There's a tournament on a Toyota an hour from his house, and he's driving 12 hours away to go fish an open. And if he tells me one more time that he's trying to make the classic, and I'm like, dude, look, I don't care how good you are. It is so hard to go win an open. And if I just don't see going around fishing opens for the next 20 years just so you can go get a classic, man. I would say go get in the elites and try to make it that way because you got a better shot. But winning an open is extremely hard.
Extremely hard.
So, but there's a Toyota in their backyard and they won't go fish it. And I'm like, man, what I personally think, and this is that they thought the opens were bigger.
The perception.
So if they don't do good in an open, right, they can kind of make excuses as to why they didn't do good. Man, those guys over there, I went and fished against them and, I had to travel, blah, blah, blah. There's not a lot of excuse when you live right by a lake as to why you didn't do good, okay? And they don't want to have to sit there and do that. So they'd rather save their money, fish a little tournament, right? And hopefully if they don't do good, they can kind of slide right on out of there. I just think that and listen, dude, we've all sucked in tournaments. Like there's nothing fun about going up there and not even having a limit or doing stuff. I've been there. I've been there at every level. But I'd rather him just say, hey man, I don't feel comfortable fishing it. I'm not there yet. But it's when they give excuses, none of those excuses are valid because it doesn't make any sense.
And that goes all the way up, and even in high school, these kids we go to Harris Chain for the last 2 years. They have the FLW or the MLF the first weekend, Bass the next. You'll have 40 boats in the MLF tournament and you'll have 260 in the Bass tournament, all because of qualifying for that national championship. That's what it's all about to them, and the perception of bass being bigger. And it doesn't make sense to me because a tournament, both organizations are the same to me. But I think that's one of the things with the opens. People see it as a perception thing. You're bigger if you fish the opens, and I just I look at the schedule myself. I fished 3 opens last year because it was on 3 of my favorite lakes, in that division.
Right.
And this year I looked at the Toyotas and the championships on my home lake, and I can fish 3 tournaments and never have to drive over an hour and 15 minutes. That's what I want to go fish. But it drives me crazy sometimes about seeing it. And I think it's about perception. I know when you talked about guys not leaving your lake, man, that drives me nuts because I made a video one day and people, they got all but hurt about it. I said, look, because you're a stud on your home lake does not make you a great fisherman. Okay. I know a lot of guys that are really good on Wheeler or really good on Guntersville, and everybody talks about how good they are. These guys are hammers, boy. They're studs. Get in that Alabama Bass Trail and show me what kind of stud you are. Travel all over the state and show me what kind of stud you are. And it drives me nuts. The guys on Guntersville that'll do that. They won't leave Guntersville. Now, I get it. Guntersville has big tournaments. Wheeler doesn't. We've had one BFL in 4 years on Wheeler. We've had one Toyota Series, we had an Open last year finally, but we haven't had big tournaments on Wheeler. And these guys had rather, there may be a $10,000 tournament on Guntersville, but they'll go fish a $20 tournament on Wheeler.
Well, and that's what, so like there was a guy who I'm fine with this. This doesn't bother me at all. Right? Like a lot of people might take offense to what we're saying. Listen, we're not calling out everyone that wants to fish certain tournaments. That's not what we're saying. What we see is there are a group of guys on a lot of these places. And I guess what even they want all the glory. They want to be called a pro. They want to wear they want all these sponsor deals. They want a lot of this. They want to be known as this. And then when it comes to actually like fishing, around and doing these things, they won't go do it. And I think that's more of like where I'm coming from, kind of like you, is that like if you just want to fish local jackpots and little club tournaments, we aren't talking about y'all guys. Like that's understandable. There's guys that like I couldn't have practiced for the Brandon Belt. I'm not that great. I don't know Rayburn that well. I'm not going to go spend $1,000. I would be the first one to tell you, yes, that is not the tournament for you. That 100%. That's correct. When I was talking earlier about Bassmaster guys fishing Bassmaster Opens, spending $1,800 to travel somewhere, and they wouldn't spend the same amount of money 2 hours from their house, that didn't make sense to me. Right?
That's right.
So we're talking about the guy that wants to go fish for $20,000 on Guntersville, and then there's a $20,000 tournament 2 weeks later on Wheeler, but he's going to go fish some little local. That's just a guy absolutely scared to death because he knows what's going to happen. He knows he won't go catch him on Wheeler, and he's scared. He knows that he's going to get called out for it.
Yeah, think about the numbers, even with the Toyota Series, okay? And I don't know their exact payout, but I believe that my entry fee was $1,800. I don't know what my entry fee was.
$1,800.
Somewhere around that. So I paid $1,800 to win less money than half the entry fee in the Brandon Belt tournament to win more money. I mean, think about that. When I bring up the idea of us having these $1,000 tournaments in Alabama, people are like, "Oh, $1,000," but it's the same people that would pay the $1,800 to go fish an Open.
And the $1,000 isn't $1,000; it's $500.
They dangle that nugget
because you're splitting.
Bassmaster has that nugget that they dangle out there of the Bassmaster Classic, and they dangle it out there. And everybody wants to go fish. And look, I've been guilty of it too. The only reason, well, not the only reason I signed up for all three, because those are three of my favorite lakes. But had that been that third lake not been Eufaula, Alabama, had it been somewhere else that I'd never been, I still would have went and fished it because I needed that opportunity at Wheeler. I needed my home lake, an opportunity to go to the Classic. But had it been on three lakes that I've never been on, I wouldn't have went and fished the Opens. Heck, I hate their schedule this year.
I'm not fishing them. It was hard for me to fish them when I'm sitting here going, Brandon Belt's free because we won Angle of the Year, right? Our Texas Team Trail, free. We paid for Bass Champs, and we won 6,400 out of the first one. So I mean, heck, you right? I mean, those entry fees I'm like, wait a minute, I'm gonna go spend $2,000 on an Open, and the first one is in Arkansas, Washita, which that would have been cool. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't have minded the schedule that much, but I was like, I'm gonna go spend $2,000 and be gone for 7 days. And I got 2 kids and a wife, and it's every day. I'm either coaching them or driving them to practice, which, whatever. But I'm going to go spend aside from the family stuff, which I do think is very high on my list, but just from the money side, I'm going to go spend all that money, or I can go fish for the same amount of money around Texas, because I got one of those tournaments is on the same day and it's free for me because angle of the year. And I'm sitting here going, yeah, what am I giving up here? And I'm going to be gone 3 days and be back home with my kids, as opposed to being gone 8 or 9 days. And I'd probably miss the weekend before. So there'd be another tournament I'd miss in there too. I was just going, I'm sorry, guys. And like you, we could get into so many things, because I know me and you think alike.
Yeah.
But do you think my sponsor, if my sponsor cares in the way we do things, the way I do things now, no one has any idea how Cliff Crochet caught that 11-pounder today. Yeah. No one knows how. I don't know if Wheeler's still winning or what. No one knows. I don't think there's a way to know how Wheeler's catching his fish today, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a whole tournament going on right now, and no one knows how anyone's catching them. So there's nothing. But if I go out and fish a tournament on whatever, and who cares what it is, and I make a YouTube video and it shows everything I do, well, what does it matter if it says Bassmaster Open or Brandon Belt or Bass or whatever?
So
I don't understand the difference.
That goes to something you said a while ago, and I meant to jump on it then. And I'm not saying this bragging about me at all. I'm talking about social media here.
Correct.
So I'm with the guy that won the $1 million Bassmaster or Bass Pro Shops, the $1 million tournament. He's won all these different tournaments. He qualified for the elites. He's an Elite Series rookie. Okay. I had to introduce him a dozen times this weekend to people that come up and knew who the guy from social media was, but didn't know who the elite angler was. Okay. My son watches everything there is about fishing, knows everything. But I had my kids we were staying down in Florida last year, and I said, okay, I want to prove a point here. I want to ask y'all a question. Can you name me the top 10 MLF guys? And I said, not you, Lake. I don't want you to answer. I want the rest of y'all. I want y'all to answer me. Give me the top 10 MLF guys. They couldn't name 10. I said, name me the top 10 Bassmaster guys. They named them. Okay, the younger generation knows the Bassmaster guys. Then I asked the parents, name me 10 Bassmaster guys. They couldn't name them. But they knew everybody on MLF because that was an older generation. But then I started asking my kids to name me all the YouTubers, all the social media guys. They knew every one of them. And so my point in saying that is these brands haven't caught up yet. These brands are still stuck in put a wrap on a boat in a truck, and that's going to make us money. And it doesn't anymore. What makes money now for these brands is the views and getting it out there to people. And it's getting to a point now to where these Elite Series guys, these MLF guys, they're going to have to go and start doing social media, start doing YouTube, start doing those things to get their name out there, because the brands are eventually going to catch up to it. And I won't name the angler's name, but I helped several of the rookies this year with getting sponsors. And I would call certain companies and try to get them sponsors. And there was one of them in particular that had zero social media, but he's probably one of the best anglers, right? And well, I'll just say it because he knows I'll say it, is JT Tompkins. Okay. He wins the Angler of the Year. And he calls me up a week or so later and he goes, Slick, nobody's called me. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, I'm not getting any offers. And I said, well, okay. And he says, yeah. He said, but when I'm with you, people call all the time, not calling, trying to give me money. I don't mean it that way. Yeah, but no. I talk to different people. Yeah. And I said, well, all right, I'll see what I can do. So I called this one company and I said, hey, I said, can you help me out with JT? I said, you know, just made the elites. And he goes, yeah, of course I know who JT is. He's great. I said, well, he said, I tell you what, he said, make me a couple of videos and send them to me. And so I did. And he called me back and he goes, Stick, he has no social media. I said, I know, but I'm going to work with him on that. He said, and he offers a deal, and it's a bad deal. Like it's a bad deal.
Yeah.
And so I called another company that was bigger, and they did it out of the kindness of their heart. They didn't want to do it, and it wasn't something that was like they would do normally, but they did it because he was struggling with getting the sponsors, and it was because of his lack of social media. And I had a guy call me while I was at Rayburn. He's got $274,000 on social. I mean, 274,000 followers on social media. But he's never dealt with the industry like we have. So he calls me up and he said, hey, he said, I'm on a fixed income. Um, I'm retired. He said, I'm wanting to get a trolling motor. Do you know where I can get a deal? And I sit there for a minute. I said, a deal? I said, dude, no, I'll get you better than a deal. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'll call you back. So I called a guy and said, hey, man, can you reach out to this guy and, talk to him, and told him the story. Dude called me back and he goes, they're giving me a free trolling motor just to make a video. I said, yeah, because you got 274,000 followers, dude. You go and these people love you, and you go out and do a video, and you're going to sell a lot of trolling motors by doing that, and the brands at some point are going to recognize it, because it's like what you said a while ago about you going and doing a YouTube video. That's worth more to me, and I'm part of those 1.8 million tournament anglers, because we got 52 million people that bought license.
I'm about to agree with what you say.
And you and I, the pros, we're in a bubble. We live in a bass bubble of 1.7 million people that are tournament anglers. The other 50 million people, they don't know who KVD is. They don't know who Jacob Wheeler is. I went down to the beach, and John with Fishing Chaos tried to prove a point to me. He said, we're going to ask 100 people this weekend, different anglers, see who they know. Now, we're in the saltwater world, okay? I've always thought that if KVD spoke, the world listened. Jordan Lee, Jacob Wheeler speaks, the world listens. No, it's us 1.7 million tournament anglers that actually fish tournaments and wildcats and stuff that listen. Nobody else does.
No
so
one.
These brands haven't figured out yet that we speak to the other 50 million. And so they're going and they're putting wraps on these pros trucks, and they're thinking that they're selling, and they're like, well, why are our sales not increasing? Because you are selling to the 1.7 million who buy the most, but we're in three categories. The MLF, the elites, they don't pay for anything. Okay. Then you got the next tier, which that's what I consider myself, opens, Toyo Series, stuff like that. We get discounts, we get some stuff for free, whatever. Then you got that next group that pays for everything. Okay. That's the group that you want buying your stuff. And a lot of these brands have not figured out that the elite pros and watching them catch a fish on MLF or Bassmaster, that's not what's selling product to that other 50 million. When we went down to the beach, we asked 100 people. One person out of 100 knew somebody in the bass world, and it was Bill. They knew who Bill Dance was. They didn't know KVD. I took Jordan Lee's batteries. I did a video on this. So Jordan gets tracker batteries, but he's sponsored by Monster Marine. So a year ago, he gives me his batteries, and he said, hey, if you find a high school kid or whoever, give them to him. I said, okay. Well, I take them. One of them's bad. I go to Cabela's. I walk in. Hey, got this battery. You got a receipt? No, they're from Jordan Lee's boat. They look at me like I'm an alien. So I said, can you get me a manager? So the manager comes up there. Tell him the story again. He said, you got a receipt? Well, no, they come out of Jordan Lee's boat. He goes, I don't. Who's Jordan Lee? I said, you don't know who Jordan Lee is? He said, no. I said, Jacob Wheeler? He said, no. I said, KVD? He said, I've heard that name before. I said, can we go back to the boat department? So we go back there, walk in the young man's office. Hey, man, I got these batteries from Jordan Lee. That's why I don't have a receipt. And the manager's still there with me. And I said, he goes, you got to have a receipt. I said, no, when Jordan Lee got his boat, from y'all, from White River Marine, who all these boats y'all got out here, that's White River Marine. They own that, and Johnny Morris, who owns all this, he owns that. And he sponsors Jordan Lee. He said, dude, I don't know who Jordan Lee is. I said, Jacob Wheeler? KVD? I said, well, you see that poster you got right out there? That's KVD.
Him. Yeah.
That's KVD. And so finally, the guy kindly, he's like, well, I guess I believe you. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was an act of Congress for me to get that battery swapped out. Nobody in Cabela's knew who Jordan Lee was.
No. So I'm real bad because I don't ever know where any of these videos this live stuff go. So much of it goes from comments. So I have to I always call up whoever and sometimes go, hey man, what should I title this? Well, this one was an easy one for me. And I never, so I didn't know. I was like, man, I just went off somewhat of your personality of going,
yeah.
He should understand where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And I called it Redneck Famous. I brought that up because people, I've done enough around Texas fishing tournaments when I was younger that if you were in that scene, right, because I knew who people were in Texas, right? I mean, I knew the Harold Allens and the Steven Johnsons, and I can go on. I knew the guys that fished, right? Because that was my little world. And I stayed in that world for a while, and I've figured out ways to get around. I don't know how, but I just, when I met Mark Zona and Scott Martin and I was fishing bigger stuff. Well, when YouTube came around, and I was anti-YouTube, but when I got on it, I'm sure I don't want to get off track, but when I got on it, I started seeing a difference in who noticed who, right? And in a level of fame that I call Redneck Famous. And I'll explain Redneck Famous. When I went to Cabela's the last time, my wife and I was up in Dallas at a soccer tournament. My kids were walking with me, and someone's like, Todd? I'm like, yeah. He goes, hey, man, I watch your videos, blah, blah, blah. We'll start talking. My daughter, who has seen this before, and she was like, Dad, that happens a lot. And I'm like, it happens once a month. It's not a lot. She goes, well, my friends all subscribe to your channel, and they all, I'm like,
that's awesome.
You're in the 6th grade. So anyways, she was like, are you famous? And I said, well, I'm Redneck Famous. And she was like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, out of the entire population, there's people that are famous. I'm in this weird little bubble that I'm sort of, people know who I am. But I was like, because it's this weird little fishing bubble, because it's what you care about. And if you care about fishing a lot, you're going to know kind of personalities, whatever it might be in that bubble. I said, that's all I am. And I said, outside of that, there's zero fame, zero. And I wouldn't even call that famous. It's just people know. And I noticed that way more with YouTube. I could go win the Brain and Belt tournament, the TXCT, the Bass Champs, and the Toyota. And that same person probably wouldn't know I did any of that.
Yeah.
They know I will now because I make videos about it and I've done things, but it's not because of that tournament. No one's paying attention. Most, 99.9% of people aren't going and seeing who won the Brain and Belt tournament. Even if they did, their names don't stand out. Now I know them. One of them was my ex-fishing partner. I fished with him forever. So I know him very well. But we also fished the tournament. So it's very hard to explain to these guys. And these guys in the opens and these guys in the elites, and I sit around going, I hear a name from an elite guy, and I'm like, I hadn't heard that guy's name in 9 months. I forgot that he existed, but like, there's nothing there. So I used to tell everyone, like, I had a question a day going, hey, I do this YouTube thing, and I have this many followers and views and all this stuff. How do you go to companies and present that to make money? And I go, yeah, I'm not the person to ask for that. And he goes, what? I said, hey, look, man, I might not be the best marketing guy in the world because I'm not a guy who goes and asks for things. I never have. It's probably my biggest downfall. There's a couple of us fishermen that say, like, we know guys that like ask for things all the time, and they get them. And I'm like, and I'm not scared of being turned down. I'm just a guy who's like, man, I don't want to ask for fishing help. I'm like, man, if I need to go figure it out on my own. So I wrote him back. I said, hey, man, look, all I'm doing is making the best YouTube stuff I possibly can. And I'm trying to get better at it. And I'm trying to get it to a point to where at some point in time, someone will see such value in it that they'll approach me. Now, someone from a marketing class going, Todd, that might be the dumbest thing in the world. I'm the smartest guy, but I still believe, if just like in fishing, if I do good enough in fishing, good things will happen. Yep. I'm trying to do good enough in the social media, YouTube, or whatever it is, that if I just keep doing good things, that I'm never going to mess that up. I can't mess that up. So I don't, like I said, someone would probably tell me that's not the way to do it, but that's how I view it. And it hasn't done bad for me. Like, I got a pretty cool phone call yesterday. I got one of the coolest phone calls I've had in a long time yesterday, and it wasn't anything big, but to me, it was a big deal that someone noticed something enough to make a phone call, and it traveled through and got to me. And I'm gonna have a meeting with them, and I'm like, like I said, I'm like, that's what I wanted. The right people. Yes. And I know I talked a little bit, but you said something earlier about there's social media now. Me and you could probably do some things to make our social media grow times 10.
Oh, yeah.
But we choose not to.
Yep.
I'm sure, right? You've had those conversations, right? Okay. I always thought that like social media is going to get so big, and I think this is what's happening with YouTube, that yes, people are going to make stuff and people are going to make videos and do all this stuff, but that's going to, just because you do it now, I think you're going to get filtered out. And I think people are going to get filtered out because it's not good. And I'm not saying the quality is not good. It doesn't have to be, professionally made, but they're going to be able to see through the BS. And I think the people that can see, like the people who aren't BSing and doing the right, those are going to stand out above the rest. And so I was like, man, I could probably go this other, I would never do it. But I see people going this other route, and I'm like, man, that's not really legitimate, and it's not. It's a lot of views, but there's no substance to it. And I was like, man, I'd rather want less views but more substance, because I feel like I rather want the right person seeing what I'm doing with the right message rather than thousands of people seeing it, but it's just fluff. There's really nothing.
Yeah, and I've seen more from when I do technique videos or just telling how I caught them. People appreciate that more than they do, like, even when I do the Floyd Bucket stuff. Okay, I just did another Floyd Bucket song yesterday. I hadn't put it out there yet, but that's just because of my relationship with Boyd Duckett. But there's a lot of things you could do probably to make it go a long way, but people appreciate the genuine stuff. I like to do the genuine stuff, and I mean, we take a lot for granted in the fishing world. Just certain knots that we tie and different ways we may set up a Carolina rig, or things we may do with our jerk bait. A lot of people don't understand it, and I've done a lot of things with the unit of just showing things with a map card, and those videos go off because people are scared to ask sometimes, you know. And I'll get private messages asking me to do a video on certain things, and I do it. And back to the sponsorship thing, I've never called a sponsor and asked for anything. Um, the ones that have called me, if it's something I use or I think it's good, then I'll do it. But I can't call somebody out of the blue. It's just hard for me to do that. And I know I may be able to get more because I know a lot of guys this year, the rookies that they picked up that phone, they called everybody, you know. Um, but I just I can't do that. If a brand comes to me, I appreciate it a whole lot more because I feel like, okay, they saw something in me, and and I feel like I appreciate that a lot more when they do that. I don't work with a lot of companies, um, and it's just because a bunch haven't reached out. I mean, there's certain companies I wish they would, you know, but they haven't, and I just have a hard time calling people and asking for stuff.
Yeah, and I guess it works. I think it does work. You know, I don't know. Hey,
Yeah,
you said something earlier about gosh dang it. I wanted to ask you about that. You touched on it for a second before you got into the sponsor thing. Oh, the private message thing. Um I I I I don't really like getting thousands of private messages, but I do like getting questions from people like, "Hey man, you haven't ever seen this. Can you do a video on that?" I do like that because there's so many things that what I think about is sometimes important. Well, I think it is important. And maybe I go too far and too deep sometimes. And then other guys are like, man, I wish we'd just do this. And I forget sometimes that stuff, I'll do some of that stuff too, because I think it's important. I don't do it. So I like getting those messages, like whatever it might be, because I'm like, oh, that is a good idea. I could do something like that.
yeah, yeah, and we did it. I got a message a couple 3 or 4 weeks ago from a parent. His kid was going to start high school fishing, and he said, "Hey man, I'm not asking for anything free. I'll pay for it." He said, "I just need you to put me together a starter kit because I don't bass fish. My kid's going to start high school fishing. I just need to know what to get." And so I put a video out, and I'm not kidding you. When I got back from Texas, it looked like Christmas. I don't know the dollar amount. I'm gonna say it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 worth of stuff that I've received in the last month. And so I took this kid a bunch of stuff. I fixed up his tackle boxes, simple stuff, like fixed up a hook box with tungsten, the hooks he needed. I got him, people sent trick worms, they sent brush hogs, rattle traps, just stuff you and I think's normal, just
Right.
stuff we would always use. Well, then I put a thing on Fishing Chaos and I put out another video and I said, hey, anybody that has somebody that you think is in need, go here, fill this out because I'm going to have to make sure it's legitimate and we're going to get you stuff. The best thing happened last week. Ryan and I, who's on our little made up Alabama Bass Council, he messaged me and he said, how many rods do you have? And I said, well, I've given a bunch of them out. I said, I don't know. We're kind of short right now on rods. He said, man, you're not going to believe what's happened. He said, they got sponsored. His son got sponsored by 13 Fishing. So he puts his rods for sale on Marketplace, puts them out on TikTok, wherever, says, hey, I got these rods for sale. A guy calls him and buys, I'm talking about a crap load of rods. And so Ryan says, hey, man, I see you're from, I think it was Texas. He said, I see you're from Texas. He said, I'm not shipping this. This is pickup only. He said, I don't want you to ship them. I want you to give them to Slick to give away to those kids. Now, this guy bought thousands of dollars worth of rods and said, hey, I don't want you to ship them. I want you to keep them and give them out to those kids. And it was unbelievable, the response. The people in the fishing community, the people in the fishing social media. I got used rods sent to me, used reels, and you know what? Those kids eat it up because
Oh
they didn't
yeah.
have anything. They didn't
Right.
have stuff. And it's been a job for me just sorting everything out, and and the messages that come in from people. I got one from a lady that she said, my son's dad's not here anymore, and my kid wants to fish, but I don't have anything. I don't know what to buy him. And it's been unbelievable the stuff we've been able to send to people, just people on social media reaching out and sending us stuff. And the guy that bought the stuff from Ryan, I just thought was incredible, you know. So
Well,
there's
so
a
go ahead.
there's a lot of kids out there, and not just kids. There's people that are get older that they want to get into the sport, but they don't know how.
Right.
They don't know what to do. I mean, the most common question I get is, I want to start fishing tournaments. How do I go about it? That's the number one question I get.
See, I don't get that much anymore. Like like tournaments as in like kind of individual, like going to the professional side of things.
Well, I get
Or
that from the high school kids about how do I get sponsors? How do I
right.
make it to the next level? And Logan and I are doing something with that. We started an organization that's going to help that. But he did the high school college chaos tournament last year, and it's the best thing my kids ever done in high school fishing. But people don't know how to go to the next level. And even what we talk about, these guys that's fishing our local lake, you know, some of them, some of them don't know how to go to that next level. And especially the sponsorship world. God, you know how tough it is when you're trying to fish professionally and make ends meet and get the money, because the fact of the matter is, unless you're wealthy, you're not going to go fish the Bassmaster Opens without sponsors. And I used to be, and I'm still anti-jersey. Okay, I ain't wearing a jersey. I had rather. I'm sponsored by Powerhouse Lithium. I'll wear their sweat. I wear a sponsor's jersey or sweatshirt every day, but I am so anti-jersey. Can't stand it. You may one day see me in one. I hope not. But um, people ask, well, how do I get sponsors? And the first thing I always tell them is exactly what you said. Go catch them. Go catch them. And that'll come. But now you gotta have some social side. And I always tell my kids, my high school kids and my college kids, if you ever speak to a sponsor, you don't ever ask, what are you giving me? What am I going to get from you? You ask, what do you want from me? And then you work to that of what you're going to get. But so many people now, that's what they do. They call these sponsors. I mean, I got a couple of buddies in the industry that work for brands, and they tell me about some of the emails they get and the messages and the phone calls, And I had a buddy call me the other day. You can figure out who it is. He won a Toyota Series championship 2 years ago. And he calls me up and he said, I need some batteries. He said, ain't you sponsored by Powerhouse? I said, yeah. He said, well, man, I talked to a couple different companies and all they want to do is 25% off. I said, well, I'll call and, see. So I called and I texted him what they were going to be. He sends me this back. And I called him and I said, that's better than anything you've got so far. He goes, yeah, but I won a Toyota Series championship. I said, and nobody knows it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, you don't even have Facebook. And now think about this. For this company, I've called them and got you this discount on batteries. Now you guide some people so you can show some people your batteries. Who's gonna know that you got Powerhouse lithium batteries? Who are you gonna sell batteries to?
Any listen, I'm gonna tell a story that I've never told, but I've always said this even about the elites, or BPT. That stuff's only so someone made a I guess I was wrong about the BPT, and like I was like, no one knows how to no one knows who saw how Cliff Crochet caught that 11 pounder. And someone says it's on their website that he caught it on a crankbait and that Wheeler's out there catching them on a swim bait in 20 foot of water or something. So I guess it says that. I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be 50 guys in this BPT event on Toledo that aren't going to catch them. There's going to be nothing. There's going to be nothing they got from this event. So, yes, they are pros. They're going to finish in the bottom 50, and there's going to be nothing from that. Does that make right? Like no one, like the batteries they have, the boat they drive, the rods, the reels, the baits they were using, they're going to get zero from this event. So there's a chance that I could put up a YouTube video the same weekend and get more from my YouTube than the guys fishing the BPT, right?
Absolutely.
And this is on the elites as well. Like if you're in the bottom 50 of an elite event, you get no coverage. You're just a name with a jersey on with some sponsors. Now, I have a jersey. I wear it because like there's Skeeter bonus, there's incentives. I wear them for more of the incentives and stuff like that. And I don't mind. But I also made a video where I kind of got crushed a little bit because I didn't weigh in this past year in the Toyota Championship. And someone was like, why didn't you weigh in? And I'm like, I didn't catch them all that great. Like I threw them back and I left. And they were like, what? And I'm like, listen, man, there was 400 people weighing in, 200 boaters, 200 coiners. Me walking across stage in a Toyota Championship. We just talked about a guy that won the Toyota Championship and didn't get any calls. And I'm in a guy that didn't catch him, that walked across the stage for 10 seconds. Do you really think my sponsors cared that I did or did not walk across that stage? I was like, if my sponsors cared whether or not I walked across the stage in that jersey for 10 seconds on live, I was like, man, my sponsors, they're looking at the wrong thing. Because if they think that's important, I'm in the wrong business too, because we're not seeing eye to eye, because I'm not helping them at all by walking across that stage in that 10-second moment of not catching them. So I didn't weigh him in. And some people were like floored about this. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably not in marketing, because anyone in a marketing bit would have been like, we don't care about that. They shouldn't. But I'll say this back to I've never told this story public, ever. I don't think very many people ever know this, but I don't think it's anything bad. I don't think he'll care. But I would probably say 12 to 13 years ago, I ended up meeting this guy, this older gentleman. We went fishing. Really cool guy. Did not know he was very good friends with people from Strike King. He was very good friends with John Barnes. So we were talking one day, and I was like, he said something about fishing with John. I'm like, man, I'd love to go fish with John, And John Barnes, if y'all didn't know, was the owner of Strike King. And I was like, I wasn't young, but I was like, I thought that was a big deal. I was like, okay. So I went to his lake house. It's not that far away, a couple of hours, and met John, and we went fishing. And John is at least 6'7", right? And like big guy, like big, like ex-football player, like big guy, very quiet. Intimidating is not a word I would, just off stature alone and who he is, could be a very intimidating guy. But I wasn't intimidated, but I was like very respectful. Fished the whole day with him. Got done. He doesn't talk a lot. He wanted to go fishing. So we went fishing, and that was the end of it. I told him thank you, and we talked, whatever, and went on my way. A couple of days go by, and I'm kind of curious as to I kind of want to know, I don't know. So I called him back. I called my buddy back up, and I said, hey man, how'd it go? He's like, oh, it went great. He said he enjoyed the day and everything. I'm like, all right, cool. And I was like, all right. And that was it. And I was like, and we kind of hinted around. He goes, he did make one comment. And I was like, yeah, what's that? He goes, he can't remember the last time he met a fisherman that he didn't talk to for more than 5 minutes that didn't ask him for something. And he said, you stayed in that boat for hours with him, got done. He said he said he doesn't remember the last time that you never asked for a single thing from him. I'm like, why would I sit there and ask for, like, I get it that he's the owner of Strike King, but dude, I got to go fishing with him, meet him. Why would I'm like, what do you mean? It blew my mind that that's what everyone does. And I'm like, man, that ain't me. Fast forward, I meet Phil Marks, and now I know John Barnes and everything. Me and John have never talked about, I've never brought that to John that he said that or anything. But yeah, I would just look like, no, I'm not going to just, hey, give me stuff. But.
And that's what they always get is, what can you do for me?
Right.
And never, what can I do for you? And we're talking about the guys in the Bass Pro Tour, and the numbers and seeing guys on camera. So I used to fuss all the time, because when Jordan was doing well, Jordan's one of them that keep the camera on a good bit most of the time. But at St. Clair, I had my iPad video, and I won't say who they showed the whole time, but I'll just say this. It was one of their bigger sponsors. So they kept showing these other people, and they weren't showing Jordan, and he was leading. And I was getting so mad because I couldn't see him. And there's, I may get in trouble a little bit for saying this, but it's a fact that certain people are shown more on the MLF broadcast than others. Okay. But earlier this year, when all the stuff went down, we're going to cut and all that, and then several sponsors left, I had an angler in the Bass Pro Tour said, hey, I'm going to send you my packet. I know you talk to a lot of brands and stuff. If you come across somebody, and that goes back to what you said a while ago about asking people for stuff. Dude, if I had half the money that I've gotten for other people this year, I'd be rich, because I'm good at going and getting you a sponsor, bro. Yeah. I'm not good at asking for me.
Right.
So he calls me up and he goes, hey, I'm going to send you my packet. You already know who I'm with, and it listed anyway. Anybody you talk to that's not a conflict that might can get me some more money, will you do that? I said, sure, send it to me. So I got a media packet. I know how many views I get a month. And I know all my analytics. And so he sends it to me, and I see the analytics, and I'm like, well, I always say this right here. That's some bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm looking at them numbers, and I'm going, no. And what MLF does, and what they send to these guys for their media packets, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but they send out the numbers from their best 5 tournaments ever. Okay. And they say we had 1.7 million impressions, and we had 125,000 people watch us. Okay. And so, I don't know, you pick an angler, Joe Blow. Joe Blow gets 1.7 million impressions at this tournament and 125,000 people. And that's what they're supposed to send to their brands, right? Do you think them people are so damn stupid that they don't know? Because this particular angler at the 5 tournaments, I went back and watched them because I wanted to prove a point. In these 5 tournaments, these 1.7 million views for Eufaula, 3.4 for this, 1.7 for this. I go back and look at all of them. He was on camera for 3 minutes and 20 seconds in 5 events. But that media packet made it look like this song gun was Taylor Swift. You know what I'm saying? And I think people see through that, but there's still some brands that are old school that don't.
No. Well, okay. So I'm telling you right now, it might not be like this in 3 years, because I'm not saying people will get fired, but people will finally wake up. But I'm telling you, 3 years ago, and still to this day, there are people that don't see through it. And they don't want to admit, and listen, it takes, I could tell you Let me put it in a different point, because we see this all the time. This has happened to you, and this has happened to me. I guarantee it. On the fishing side, someone could tell us about a bait for 6 months, right? Hey, man, better get on this. And you're like, yeah, whatever, whatever, and whatever. And 6 months later, maybe they get in the boat with you, and you see it, and you're like, holy crap, I missed it, and you feel like you're an idiot, right?
Yeah.
I've been there. Well, I'm telling you that when you two did that to me, I was like, oh, I don't like admitting when I was wrong. Man, I was night and day wrong. I was so far off. I was so bad. There are still people that look at this, and I've been saying this, and I'm glad there are certain things that I'm glad YouTube is around for, because it documents stuff. And I have no problem documenting things that I say. So like when we say something, people don't realize we're putting it out there, and we got to stand behind it. And I've been saying this. I said it about MLF a long time ago, that you can go look at anything I've ever said. I don't think anything I've said, it's never been to where I'm trashing them. I've just been like, man, you can't keep doing what you're doing and expect this. And right. I've always said they were going to change things that I never knew. We always said, I don't know where the finish line is. They keep moving the goalpost every time I look up. And I don't have enough money to figure it out every year, to figure out where I'm supposed to be. I gotta do things that I can see and grab a hold of. And this other tournaments like make sense to me. Same thing with this professional fishing and all these things. I'm like, man, I see the writing on the wall that professional fishing is not going up. Not with where we're at right now. It's
I agree.
I personally think it's going down, but other people can say it's staying the same, but no one can say it's going up. I think it can go up, but I think major things have to happen. I think major organizations have to disappear. I think we all have to get back to 100 people. I think I think a lot of stuff has to happen. And even then, I don't know if it'll fix anything. And I could care less if it fixes it, because it's irrelevant to me in a lot of things. But there are still companies and still things that still put a higher value on things, because that's the way it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if people in the companies that don't look at it that way and just look at it for what it is as of today, they're going to win. They're going to win. And these other ones, they better, and it sucks. It sucks because I know that's the way it was, but man, it's not trending that direction.
Back in the day, I lived to watch Bassmaster on Saturday morning. We had TV. There's no TV anymore. It's all streaming. And I catch a lot of heat now from buddies of mine, because my name, my tag says Wheeler King. Okay, that was a joke to begin with, and I just said, you know what, I'll put it on my truck. I'll own it. That's what my name is on Instagram. Okay,
right.
But if you're gonna call yourself Wheeler King, and you're gonna park right there by the boat, you better catch them.
Right.
And so, anyway, I started noticing that Wheeler is one of those lakes where you can just about see where everybody is if you ride down the lake. We got 10 miles that you're going to fish, that you're going to catch. So what was happening to me was I'd win a tournament, and then people would watch where I was, and they'd be back out there during the week or try to fish it, when I was fishing. And so, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to start videoing everything I do. I'm going to put it on YouTube. I'm going to put it on TikTok. I'm going to put it on Instagram, and I'm not going to care, because guess what? At least I can make money off my stuff, because they're ruining it for me fishing tournaments. Correct. So I can make more money doing that. So for the last 3 or 4 months, I've been putting stuff on YouTube, but it's unpublished. I haven't made my YouTube, where it shows stuff yet. I just been stacking stuff up. And so one of my buddies called me the other day, and I went to one of my really good smallmouth holes, but it's got to be certain water moving. It's got to be certain conditions. And so I pull up there and I do a video, and I stop and I turn around and I said, listen, I'm going to catch 1 4 or 5 pounder here, and that's all I'm going to catch. So I throw up there a second cast. I catch like a 480, and it's a great video. And so I send it to him, and he goes, "You ain't posting that." I said, "Why wouldn't I post it?" He said, "To show everybody where you're at." I said, "They already follow me anyway." So there's three people that came by me while I was sitting there. There's people that see where we fish. So what does it matter? I can for sure make money by posting it on YouTube and posting it on social media. But if I just try to be secretive, somebody else is going to go wear it out and I might not win the tournament. So I'm guaranteed to make money. The day that we fish the Alabama Bass Trail, that's why Kay and I are into it right now, is because it's 12 degrees at takeoff. I I thought we should have moved the tournament. She did move it from Saturday to Sunday, so we went from 27 as a high to 34 as a high. So anyway, we sat in the truck till 10 o'clock. Well, I stayed on live and did videos. I made more money sitting in the truck doing a live and doing videos than I would have fishing a tournament. Because had we finished 11th in that tournament, we would have made $2,000. Entry fee was $1,000. You split it, we got $500 each. Gas, all that stuff that goes into it. We didn't make any money, but I made guaranteed money talking into this phone. And you know, I recorded everywhere we went, every fish we caught, showed everything. And people at home get mad about that. You're showing the juice. You're showing everybody. Dude, people are going to follow you and going to figure it out anyway. You know, and a lot of people that fish tournaments, it's getting on a whole nother subject. I try to explain to them there's no magic spot. And, you know, when you try to get information, that's why I hate getting information. It's hard to catch somebody else's fish. And there's a young angler on the Elite Series now. He's a rookie. All I heard last year was negative comments. He's got people practicing for him. He's getting all this information. You still got to catch him in a tournament. It's hard to catch somebody else's fish. And unless you know the specific situation, the current, and everything lines up, you're not going to catch them anyway. You know, so now it's kind of changed to where I used to be that secretive guy. I didn't want nobody to know anything that I was doing. I wouldn't lie, but I might not tell you. And now I'm gonna make something off of it by showing it. So I just show it.
I still make a lot of money fishing. So I've never said everything I put on YouTube is like all of it. And what I mean by that is I'm probably
still
not
keep some stuff. There's still some stuff you don't.
I'm going to keep a lot of stuff. There's even my wife came back to me the other day, like a couple of days ago. She's like, "Hey, when are you going to make another series?" And I'm like, "Man, how do you even know anything about the series, you know, my Alabama water series and stuff like that?" And I'm like, "Hey, look, I made that reason because I made that video. One, there's a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to show people that like it's my only way to show. I talk a big game about I don't get info. I don't do any of this stuff. I was like, look, here's me getting on the water on Guntersville. This is my second time I've ever seen the lake. If you watch my practice, no one would sit there and be like, man, he got some spots from so-and-so or information, because you can see how I started from day one, from 4 days into the event, and you can see all this stuff. And then you can see that it progressed into what I figured out and how it was this whole deal. Even Luke Duncan goes, Luke was like, I cannot believe you freaking caught them on docks. And I'm like, hey, look, man, I never had a bite on a dock in practice. Like it formulated into this deal. And I said, man, that's what fishing really is. Like for a lot of us, now there's some guys that had spots and there's a lot of other things that people do. And I said, but man, this is how I fish and how I catch them and why I do pretty good at events. So I was like, because it's just, this is how I look at things. And so it was a way for me to show people that like, you don't need info, you don't need spot, you don't need any of this stuff. This is how things unfold. Now, sometimes they unfold the wrong way and you don't catch them. and I learned from that and move on. But that's what I could show. And so I showed it because certain things, it was such a unique event, and how luckily my GoPro recorded because you've been out there and GoPro sometimes quit on you and you don't know it and stuff. I said nothing quit on me. It showed the entire event, good and bad. I didn't have a great final day, whatever, but I showed everything. And I was going, man, this is really cool, because I think a lot of people go, oh, I went out there, fished, found this spot and caught 21 pounds off of it by making the same cast with the same bait. And I'm like, not even close. And I was doing all these different things. I don't know. I like that series. I had another one that's on my private. I made 2 on my private channel. And my last one was Toledo Bend in the Bassmaster Open. And it's 21. It's a 21 video series. And it's about from start to finish from the Toledo Bend where I made the top 10. And there's so much stuff that it shows that, once again, the progression of why I picked the areas on the lake, how I fished places I've never even fished on Toledo Bend. I live an hour from there. Like almost all the fish I caught were not in places I've ever even fished in my life.
That's a great idea.
It was really cool. My first one happened at Choke Canyon when I did it. And the practice was okay. Day one was really cool because we kind of lucked into it, like our bad. Day two was this whole other thing that it was like we crushed on them on day two, and it showed how we did it, or like we just found this area, and it was like we were like literally from 10 o'clock on, we could call our shots anywhere we wanted to go. And we were caught like from a hard tournament for like 4 hours. No one found these fish in the tournament. And we ended up catching one of the biggest bag of the day and moved all the way up. But that's where I learned it. And then I started realizing that how I could make a video, and people don't like it, but I kind of leave some cliffhangers and some things like that. And so this happens. Todd makes all his videos on Lake Athens. Never made a video on Lake Athens in my life. I've been to Lake Athens twice, and it was both times I fished with John Barnes. The only times I've ever been. I was going to do this series about Eufaula because I'm not going to lie. Like, Eufaula was one of those ones I could make a series. I have all the footage to make the series, was going to make it. And then they put a Toyota series on Eufaula, Oklahoma the same week, almost the same time for next year. And I was like, all right, I might hold off on this. So I'm not going to lie. There's some things I'm like, there's a lot of money I could probably make doing the same thing. I just kind of what I figured out. So I'm going to wait a little bit on that. But there's certain things I just can't get myself to like give away at times.
But that's what people want to see, the whole process. And MLF in the beginning, they weren't going to make it about the fishermen. Or the Bass Pro Tour wasn't going to make it about the fishermen. They were going to make it about fish catches. Well, everybody sees fish catches. We can see them everywhere. What I want to see is Jacob Wheeler leading, and then on the final day, his fish aren't there. I want to know what's going on right here of how he's going to go find them. I want to see the struggles. I want to see the whole process. But my son, my son loves Ben Milliken. And I'll tell you a funny story about my son. My son watches all this stuff. So Ben Milliken put some stuff on Fish Tips at Wheeler. I did not have nice things to say about that. So my son comes to me and he goes, "Hey, Daddy," he said, "I know you get a bad attitude sometimes and you want to get into it with people." He said, "I just want to let you know." He said, "Ben Milliken is an MMA world champion." I said, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "And he loves to fight." He said, "So just don't say nothing to Ben Milliken." So we fast forward to Harris Chain and Clark Ream had a situation with Ben,
Yep,
and
I know.
it was posted and whatnot. And so I was on the phone with my son, and Clark was standing there telling me about it. And I said, "Well, hey," I said, "you better be careful." I said, "Ben Milliken, he'll beat the hair off you." I said, "He's an MMA champion." And my son goes, "You didn't really just say that, did you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, Daddy, Ben Milliken ain't never fought MMA. I just made that up to mess with you. I said, this whole time I'm thinking he's Billy Badass, and he may be. But he had I said all that, got off the story. At Eufaula, Alabama, that's like it's 4 hours away, but it's one of my favorite lakes. Been there a lot. I'm supposed to do well there. And man, I missed the boat. I missed the fish being out deep. I don't talk to anybody there, and I'm fishing shallow the whole time, and I'm struggling.
Wait,
And,
where's this
at Eufaula, Alabama.
Okay, yeah.
And so I get back home a couple of weeks later, and my son's dogging me out about it. I finished like 150th or something, and my son's just giving me down the road. And Ben Milliken finished really well there, and so I come in his room. He goes, "Hey, come in here and look at this." I said, "What is it?" He said, "You want to see how a pro finds fish?" I said, "Oh God." It was Ben Milliken. He was doing exactly what you said about that series. Okay. He told about his practice, why he fished there. Now, did somebody give him the waypoints? I don't know. Who cares? My point is he was telling the process of why he thought the fish would be there, showed his idling charts, where he was idling. He showed the whole thing. And I think that's what gets the interest of a lot of people on YouTube is show me how you do it. Well, show me your practice, show me your thought process,
Well, so and like I said, when I made Alabama Waters, I was a little bit more so I record every day, no matter what. If I'm out on the water, my camera's on. So I literally showed me putting in at the ramp and taking off. And if you had seen my Gunnersville map, which I think I might have shown it, there's no trails, there's no waypoint, there's nothing on there. There's just nothing, right? Just a map. And so I start doing all that. Well, I always say that like what everyone's watching, I always kind of call it like it's not fake, but I'm just saying like a lot of YouTube is what I would call fake. Now, a lot of people would hear me go, "Oh, they're really not catching the fish." It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is this: is the elites and BPT is also, it's not the story. It's not it's like reading a book, okay? And there's 32 chapters in a book, and you start on chapter 20, right? The elites and BPT, you're starting on chapter 20 of a book, okay?
Absolutely.
If you're watching a YouTube video, chances are you're starting on the last two chapters, the ending. And so that's great and all, but if everyone wonders why you're not catching fish, it's because 100% you missed the first 20 chapters. The first 20 chapters are so important. It tells you everything you need to know about the ending, how you got there, what it's all about. Yeah, that's great that you have the right rod and the right reel and the bait to throw on that brush pile. No offense, every one of us probably would come close to doing good in that event. I always have a weird deal about high school fishing because there are times where there are spots on Rayburn. I could take every single high school kid out there and they would win that event.
Yeah.
I don't care how bad they are or whatever. If they could throw a Carolina rig out there, they're going to win that event. So, what do I think about that? What I think about YouTube and some of that stuff is they're telling you how to catch a fish off this. And I'm not saying everyone, but when I'm bringing this up because I know, you know this too. If someone gives me, there are YouTube guys that call up people and they go to the certain lakes and they call up certain people and this guy's on them like, "Hey man, you better get down here. We're crushing on them." And he goes down there and they catch fish. And there's going to be YouTube guys that get mad at me and I'm literally not talking about them. Like I'm not really talking because I don't watch their videos. I just know because some of these guys call me and go, "Yeah, I went fishing with so-and-so the other day." I'm like, "Oh, okay. So he just rolled down there and got in or like, yeah, I told him where to go," whatever. So these guys think that they're going around and some of them do, but I'm just saying some of them, you never really know. And so some of these guys, and they're telling you all this good stuff, and it's real, but that's not really how they got there. And they left that one little part out. Well, that part was huge. And so you can't always give the whole story, but that's why I try to do in some of these events, and that's why I try to show so much tournament footage, is because I'm like, hey man, I can't fake it. I'm not throwing Strike King stuff and trying to promote Strike King stuff. I'm throwing Strike King stuff with freaking $50,000 on the line, right? I'm throwing at Alabama Waters. I'm throwing my structure jig and my popping perch pad perch catching fish on stuff with a 200 grand on the line. Like and y'all don't really see me lose anything or nothing. I'm like, yeah, because like I trust it. Trust me. If that much money's on the line, I'm gonna throw whatever I think is gonna win me the money. So I don't know. I have a pretty big passion about that side of the YouTube part and trying to explain to people that, like, man, there's nothing wrong with watching those videos, but I think so many people want so much more and they don't realize that, man, there is more there. You know, does that make sense? I hope that makes sense.
Yes. We did the first ever YouTube video I did was for a company. Buddy of mine owned this particular jig company. It's a pretty big company now, but he sold it. He calls me up and he wants to do a shell bed video because I used to dive for mussels on the Tennessee River. So that's how really I got good at fishing, was I dove. And I got to see a lot of things. And he called me up and he said, I want to do a shell bed video. I'm like, okay. So he comes and we catch them. And the next day he wanted to go catch smallmouth. And I said, you know, it's kind of late. You know, the only way we're going to be able to really catch them good is live bait. We can fish artificial, but we'll fish live bait. And he's got like legit camera stuff at that time, you know, thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And he's got the setup. And so we get down there and we catch smallmouth. We're catching them good, live bait. He says, I'm going to put a few of these in live well. And I said, okay. So we weren't keeping them. He just wanted to take pictures and stuff. So we keep like 5 in a live well. And he goes, all right. He said, I'm ready. I said, what do you want to do? He said, I'm going to do a video on my little jig, this finesse jig that I had, of catching smallmouth. He used the smallmouth that was in the live well, and he would hook them up and put it out there, and he was really, really good at editing. And so he would act like he was setting the hook, and then when I went back and watched the video he put together,
you never know.
It was incredible. His was better than mine, and mine was real. And I was so mad because I was like, okay, I caught most of those smallmouth on live bait, but your video makes it look like you are a hammer. And my video was authentic. Every fish I caught was like in that video, live catch, whole 9 yards. And his video was 10 times better than mine. And it was all fake. And so people would ask me about it, like, man, y'all killed them smallmouth. I'd be like, no, we didn't. No, we did not. Video looks that way, but those fish were hooked, line let out, and then reeled in. That was not real. And that broke me for many years now. I don't believe anything. You know, I'm looking, I'm going, now, did they do the same thing that guy did, or did they really catch them?
And like I said, I'm not really I'm hoping that doesn't go on, because I'm never saying that. But like I said, if you go around and you throw all this different stuff, right, but you called up a buddy and got a waypoint on this place, I personally believe that catching fish is not as hard as finding fish. I think finding fish is way harder.
100%.
So there's a lot of things that go on into, I mean, I just did a map video that I just laugh about because people like talking about like studying maps and doing all that stuff. And I'm like, the live scope shows you there's fish freaking from one end of the lake to the other all over the place randomly. So like looking at a map, to me, yes, it gives you an idea, but I would never study a map going, oh, I'm going to go look at that, because I have no idea I don't know where a fish is supposed to be, right? They could be anywhere. Once I figure that out, then I'll look at a map. But you're going to do a whole video and you go catch 30 pounds, but the spot was given to you and you're on YouTube doing all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with making the video on a bait and everything else like that. I'm just saying you're watching something and it's great. Or this is the best thing. So many videos are about these lakes and these guys catching 10-pounders. And I'm going, hey, look, you want to know why guys catch 10-pounders? You want to know why guys on Gunnersville don't catch 10-pounders every day? Y'all don't have 10-pounders.
We do.
Wheeler doesn't have 10-pounders swimming around.
Never caught.
Right. So don't get misconstrued about big fish. Now, don't get me wrong. I like catching big fish, and it's fun to go catch 10-pounders and all that stuff. I think catching a 10-pounder in a tournament is way bigger a deal than catching a 10-pounder randomly or just a regular day. But if you go fish places like OH Ivy right now and JB, there's some lakes out there. By golly, you put some of these other fishermen out there, they'll able to go catch a 10-pounder every single day as well. And there's nothing wrong with what those guys are doing. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that if you're trying to catch a 10-pounder at your home lake and you don't have 10-pounders, what that guy's really telling you is irrelevant to you. Yeah. And so I'm like, I try to go more like, hey, this is something that might be helpful to you on your lake because you're not fishing the lake I'm fishing, right? And so this is a way to do it at your lake and try to get better at fishing, and hopefully that'll help. Not like, just because I'm catching big ones means you're going to go catch big ones. Well, no, they have to live in the lake.
Yeah, I did a video last year. I caught a 864 on camera, and I was so pumped up. It was on Wheeler. And man, I did this video. I was like a little kid, and I've caught bigger fish, but not on Wheeler. That's the biggest one I've ever caught on Wheeler. And I'm like, look at this. This is my PB on Wheeler, and I'm just so excited. And these people start bashing me in the comments like, "Oh my God, that's your biggest fish. I've caught this and I've caught that." And I'm like, I've caught as many fish as anybody on Wheeler, and that's the biggest one I've ever caught. So I was pumped up about it. And that was the crazy thing I saw when we went to Texas. When we get to Fork, our second fish is 9.4.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I'm like, oh my. And look, we saw some way bigger than that, on live scope. And I was like, oh my gosh, like how incredible would it be to be able to do that? And that was one of the things talking about the Brandon Belt tournament. I didn't have any plans of coming back. I had talked to Poche had called me earlier in the year wanting to go fish, and I said, well, let's go fish a Brandon Belt tournament. But I had no plans of coming back. But then when I found out about all the stuff, and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to come back because
I wanted to know if you're coming back.
I'm coming back because I want to catch a 10-pounder. But
well, dude, Conroe. Hey, Conroe, are you coming to Conroe?
So I got to look at our schedule. I come back to Rayburn May the 18th, but the Bassmaster Elites, when they go to Toledo Bend, what is the date of the Conroe tournament?
I know we're over there because I had to make my schedule. We were talking about the other day because we go TXTT, and then a couple days later is our Toyota event, and our Toyota event ends Friday, and that's our practice days for the Conroe event. So if me and Russell both make the cut in the Toyota, we get no practice on Conroe. So Conroe is February 24th and 5th of February.
Yeah, so the 24th,
and then March 7th and 7th and 9th is the Grand Slam Brandon Belt tournament, which is $100,000.
Yeah, that's the one that we're probably coming to. The 24th is my son's first or second high school tournament of this year, and I knew there was some conflict in there because I wanted him to be our alternate. We could have an alternate because Logan wasn't going to be able to fish, but two of them, and but I'm not really coming back to fish for the points. I mean, I'm coming back to fish because it's 50 grand.
Well,
and
fish the big one for 100 grand.
That's the one I want to fish. And we'll probably, me and my son will probably come back and fish that one. But I was trying to time it to where I could go to Toledo to the elite event and then go and do that, because some of the things that we've got going on, and that stuff I'll talk to you not on here about, different things that we're doing with Fishing Chaos. I need to be at Toledo to do some filming stuff, to do some content stuff, especially with Jordan. Jordan's the one that got my social media, my TikTok. We went to Lake Champlain and he was like, dude, you need a TikTok. And he grabbed my phone, made me a TikTok, and then he posted a video, and he posted like 3 or 4 of the first videos, and we were laughing about it on the way home. I said, man, I got 50 followers. I'm famous, you know. And
you redneck
crazy
famous.
thing. Yeah, the crazy thing was I never took it serious. And we had the Alabama Bass Trail had a pro-am, and Jordan was fishing. He got hooked in the head, and I had just done rankings for the top 10 fishermen in Alabama, non-pros, and this guy we call, his name's Chad Hall, we call him Seabass. He was the one that hooked Jordan, and he was ranked number 3 in the state. So the next day I go and do a video about how I'm kicking him out of the top 10. It's the first time I ever said the Alabama Bass Council. I'm kicking him out of the top 10. If he can't cast any better than that, he's done. And we've put him on probation, all this stuff. It was just a funny video. Well, I'm leaving to go to Lake Martin for my son's high school tournament. And my son wakes up that morning. He goes, Daddy, your video's at 500,000. And I said, what? I didn't have a video over 20,000 at the time.
Right.
Well, I kept watching it. It kept growing. It kept growing. And that morning, the walleye cheating scandal come up on my For You page. And I said, dadgummit, this is going to kill my video. That's actually what caught the algorithm caught my video. And
Because of that.
It got so big.
Yeah.
So I start getting these followers from it. And then somebody tells me one day, like, you know, you can make money if you got 10,000 followers. So I started posting something every day. And then I got up to 50,000 when I went to iCast. And I thought, okay, I'm going to monetize this thing and just see what happens. And from that point, it became a job. I mean, you're having to post every single day. And you got to pay attention to the analytics. It became a thing. And so now, I'll just see things on the side of the road in video. You got to have that camera ready all the time because you never know.
So, we're going to end this because I want to make sure I get to talk to you about something else. But, you know, I've said this before. When I started YouTube. Oh, he left me, but he'll be back. I started YouTube because FLW made me buy a camera. And that's when we did away with co-anglers. They did away with co-anglers, and we had to go buy a GoPro. So I had to go buy a GoPro, and you know, I'm like, one, and someone on here was laughing or was asking how to join my private channel, and I always get that all the time. Well, I found out that to do my private channel is you can't do it on the phone, or someone said they figured out how to do it on the phone, but on a computer, for whatever reason, when you click on it, my homepage, it says join, like it's the easiest thing in the world. I didn't have a computer when I started all this stuff, because I was anti everything, right? I was anti the camera, all this stuff. So I had to go buy a computer. My wife's like, hey, get a hard drive. I'm like, you better come with me on that too. So yeah. She got me a hard drive, did all that stuff. I had no idea what is. So I was making videos on iMovie on my phone. Was my first ever, some of my YouTube stuff. Like, you talk about hard to do. So I was doing all this stuff, but what was crazy was was so it was the first day I ever went fishing with it. We were on the lake. It was in January because I had to buy it before we went up to wherever we were going first. And so me and my buddy were out there fishing on Jason. Now, I've never posted this video. It's literally on my editing board right now. I'm going to post this video. Problem is, I have the footage of what's the coolest thing in the world. What happened? This might be my best ever video that ever pops up on YouTube. I've been trying for like a year to find, and maybe I deleted it, the footage leading up to it. Like, so I only got like a 1 or 2 minutes of the actual video. Now I'm not going to, it's freaking, when it happened, I was like, I can't believe this is on camera. One of those deals.
Yeah.
And so that was it, but I've never posted. I'm going to post it, I guarantee, in the next couple of weeks. Because I've looked for the other footage. But anyways, so I started seeing what all this stuff could do. But I had my camera on all the time, and I was practicing for a Toyota event, and I'm sure most of these guys have seen it. But I'm fishing around, and I get my frog stuck up in a bush, and I go get it out of the bush, and as I'm coming out, and the water had been really high, like super high, and it was falling. And usually when it gets really high, that's the wasp they put all the nest, in the bushes. It gets real bad when the water gets high, like crazy wasp nest. And as I'm backing out, I go over this bush that I could just run over with my trolling motor, and there was a giant wasp nest there. And I mean, instantly I saw him come. Well, luckily it was in May or something. I threw my rod and I ran to the back of the boat because I hit him in the front, and I jump in the water. Well, I didn't think much about it, right? That was it, and I got stung one time on my arm, got like floated the boat away, did all this stuff, got back home. So I'm Bradley Hallman's there, fishing the Toyota with me there. He's there, my buddy Russell, whatever. And we're all in at night, right? And every night I go through and I download my footage of the day, regardless. I don't know whenever I'll use it, right? And I'm like, oh man, I forgot about this, guys. Y'all got to look at this. And so I edited it real quick, just a real short little deal. It took me like 1 minute. I edited it and I saved it, and then I sent it. I was like, hey, Hallman, what do you think about, like, look at this thing? And Hallman sits there and he watches it like 20 times in a row and just laughs every time. And I'm like, man, and he's laughing about it. And I didn't think it was all that funny because it was me, right? And I yelled in it, and I yelled because not because I was getting stung, but when I yell, and you can't see me, I run past the camera and you hear me jump in the water, and I yell at the same time. Well, I'm yelling because I'm like, I can't believe I have to jump in the water. Like, I can't believe I have to do this. Like, and I did that. But it sounds like I'm getting stung. Well, I finally get it all away. And during this time, you see all the wasp around my camera in the boat doing all this. And I'm underwater, like by the motor. So he sends it to Luke Duncan, and Luke Duncan like starts on it. And next thing I know, I posted it going, God, this might be embarrassing. Same deal. Hundreds of thousands overnight, and people are all laughing about it. And I'm like, I can make fun of myself, like it's no big deal. But I watch stuff like that happen that half the time it's not even like the fishing part. It's like right now there's a video out there. I think Clark Ream posted it.
Yeah,
guys in that deal where he hits a wave, and I'm like, it's gonna be a good video. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, my son showed that to me on the way here this morning, and about that time the phone rang and it was Clark, and I said, that's funny, I was watching your video. He said, well, I was watching one of yours, and he had told me that somebody had sent it to him about that wave, and then later it come up on my For You page. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Well,
hey, so we've been going for a long time, which is great. I'm glad you joined me. I'm sure I want to do it again. I always tell, like, I had the guys from Arizona. There's some guys at Arizona that fished the TXTTs last year, came in second in Angler of the Year. And I kind of got to know those guys, Seth and I forget his name, his partner, Robert. And I got to know them because we were in an Angler of the Year battle with them last year and had them on. And so I had them on before this tournament. They came down and fished the Brandon Belt all the way from Arizona. So they travel. You talk about a drive. Theirs is like a 24 or 5 hour drive, or 20. I think it's a 20. And so, yeah, if you come down again in March, hit me up, man, and we'll do something again.
Yeah, we're definitely coming back, man. I absolutely love Texas. I caught a lot of heat from my kids and stuff because I said I wasn't coming home, but I absolutely loved it. I mean, we really needed a couple of more weeks because, you know, being from Alabama and you go to Texas, you hear about O.H. Ivy. I've heard about J.B. Thomas, and you hear about all these lakes that you really want to go to. You just don't have time, you know, once you get out there. But we're definitely coming back. And that Sam Rayburn, the high school Bassmaster Open on Sam Rayburn, that was one that we were coming to. My son picked that one out early this year. I told him he could pick one real far away that he wanted to go to, and our first one was at Harris Chain, and I was like, "Well, dude, we already been to Harris. I mean, that's 11 hours." He goes, "Yeah, but that wasn't Bassmaster. That was MLF." I was like, "Okay, well, we'll go wherever you want to go." So,
Well, I'm looking at my schedule, and I don't know. I think they had an off limits for the Grand Slam. I'm not sure, but I don't see anything. I'll have to check, but hit me up if you can spend. I know you went to Fork last time. If you got a that time of the year, listen, I'm inviting you. If you want to go somewhere and have like, and it's a public lake, and I'm not gonna say, well, if you want to go sight fishing,
yeah,
dude, you
I'm
better
all
come.
in.
You will be in awe. Like it'll be the way better than fishing the tournament. I'm just telling you. Like, so we'll figure out if you can get a day before or after, and we'll go do that.
Yeah, it sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and end it and
All
sit
right.
down. I'll holler. We'll talk for a second.
All right.
All right.